In the world of high-stakes corporate innovation, success is often measured by the height of your tower and the polish of your suit. It is measured in the logos on your business card and the square footage of your office and the way a room shifts when you walk into it. The world has very clear ideas about what competence looks like from the outside, and it trusts those ideas with a confidence that is rarely examined until something goes badly wrong. But for Caleb Matthews, success was measured, in the 3 crackers he arranged in a perfect triangle in his daughter's lunchbox every morning. That was the metric that mattered. That was the thing he got right every single day, regardless of what else the world was deciding about him. Caleb was 27 years old, and his hands told a story that his resume no longer bothered to explain. They were the hands of someone who had spent years solving problems that didn't come with instruction manuals. Hands that knew the difference between a component that was failing and a component that was lying about failing. Hands that understood machinery the way a musician understands an instrument, not as a collection of parts, but as a living system with tendencies and moods and a logic that rewarded patience. He ran a small single-bay repair shop on the outskirts of the city, a space that smelled of gear oil and solder and machine oil, a space that announced nothing about itself to anyone passing by. To the world, he was just a trade guy. Scuffed work shoes, frayed collar. A man who fixed things in a small shop and went home and disappeared into an ordinary life that nobody was tracking or thinking about or measuring by any standard that the world considered worth applying. Nobody knew that 3 years earlier, Caleb Matthews had been the principal systems architect for a global infrastructure giant. Nobody knew, because he had never told anyone, and because the kind of people who might have recognized him had long since moved on, to watching someone else. He had walked away from that life on a Tuesday in October when his wife passed away, and the architecture of everything he had built around them both collapsed in a single afternoon. The 2 in the morning strategy calls and the executive pressure and the quarterly roadmaps, none of it meant anything anymore. What meant something was Lily, 6 years old, her mother's daughter in every way that made looking at her both the hardest and most necessary thing Caleb did. Every day, he chose a small shop and a smaller paycheck because he needed to be present. Not technically employed in the same building, not available by phone after bedtime. Present, there. He was content with that choice in the way that people are content with decisions they know were right, even when they are difficult. He fixed things, went home, made dinner, helped Lily with her drawings, and put her to bed. And then, after she fell asleep, he went to work on something else entirely. Rainy afternoon, a black luxury sedan pulled up to his humble curb and changed the atmosphere of the street the way expensive things sometimes do, not loudly, but with a certainty of presence that expected to be noticed. Out stepped Charlotte Whitman, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar automotive empire, a woman whose professional life had been built on the premise that quality announced itself and that you could read the value of a thing from its exterior presentation if you knew what to look for. Charlotte looked at Caleb's shop, the plywood tables propped on folding legs, the salvaged parts arranged in an order that meant nothing to someone who didn't know what they were looking at, the puzzle of components and handwritten notes, and the general texture of a place that had no interest in performing respectability. She looked at all of it with the slow, measured smile of a person encountering something that confirms a belief they already held. She told him she thought he had the wrong address. She told him the salvage yard was 3 miles back. She asked, with the particular cruelty of someone who believes they are simply being honest, whether he actually thought this scrap heap belonged on the same stage as her technology. Caleb didn't answer with anger. He didn't defend himself or explain himself or make any move toward the argument that was being offered to him. He adjusted the zipper on Lily's jacket, told her everything was okay, and let Charlotte's words settle into the air and dissolve. Charlotte dismissed his shop as a dump and left, already thinking about something else, already certain that nothing here had been worth her time. She didn't know what she had walked away from. The device that Lily called his puzzle box, a name given with the pure descriptive accuracy of a child who sees things as they are, was not a collection of salvaged junk. It was a revolutionary energy optimization system that Caleb had been developing in the hours between Lily's bedtime and his own, under the yellow warmth of 3 bare bulbs in the back of his shop. 6,000 hours of trial and failure. 6,000 hours of keeping every failed version not to hide the mistakes but to remember them, to preserve the record of why the current version was still running. It was the kind of development work that cannot be rushed or bought because it is made something that money can commission but cannot manufacture genuine understanding of a problem at its or deepest level, the kind that only comes from sustained, unglamorous, unwitnessed immersion. The puzzle box was going to change the economics of energy systems in ways that Charlotte's engineers, with all their credentials and resources, had not gotten close to. But Charlotte had evaluated the engineering by the condition of its casing, and she had moved on. Months passed. The city kept moving. Lily drew pictures at the edge of Caleb's workbench while he worked, houses with doors on every wall, or all of them open. Caleb continued arranging crackers in perfect triangles every morning and working under the bare bulbs every night, and the puzzle box continued to become more refined, more complete, more ready. And then Charlotte's empire began to show the cracks that had always been there beneath the polished surface. A $90 million insurance scam unraveled in a way that these things always eventually unravel loudly, publicly, and at the worst possible time. Simultaneously, or fatal design flaw emerged in Charlotte's flagship prototype, the kind of flaw that doesn't announce itself until it is too late to manage quietly. The combination was devastating. Charlotte was forced to close her primary manufacturing factory, a legacy building that she had considered her greatest asset, a physical monument to everything she had built. The closure was not just financial. It was the kind of loss that tells a person something about the foundation they thought they were standing on. While Charlotte's empire was contracting, Caleb had not been idle in any of the ways that mattered. The puzzle box patent had attracted the attention of a legendary investor, the kind of person who has made enough right calls to know that the real signal is in the person, not the pitch deck. The investor understood what Caleb had built, not because it was explained to him in the right language in the right room, but because he had learned to read the thing itself rather than its presentation. He backed Caleb the way you back someone when you have stopped caring about the casing and have started paying attention to what's actually inside. With that capital behind him, Caleb did something that nobody in the industry had seen coming, because nobody had been watching him closely enough to anticipate it. He used the revenue from the puzzle box patent to buy Charlotte's old factory at auction. The building that had been the crown of her empire, the legacy she had watched, close its doors, was now his. He reopened it without ceremony or announcement. He didn't hold a press event or send a release or make any move to draw attention to the symmetry of what had happened. He just opened the doors and started building. Charlotte heard about it the way people hear about things they weren't meant to miss through industry whispers that eventually became too specific to ignore. She drove to the factory that had been hers, walked through doors that she had last walked through in the context of loss, and found something she had not been prepared to encounter. The same components she had dismissed as junk were now the engine of a system that had quietly stolen the market by being 40% more efficient than anything her company had ever produced. The salvage yard she had written off in 30 seconds of contemptuous assessment was now running circles around every credentialed, resourced, institutionally validated competitor in the space. The scrap heap, was the most advanced operation in the industry. She found Caleb at a workbench, not in a suit, not in anything that performed the role of successful person in his old gray technical jacket, working with his hands in the way he had always worked, with Lily nearby drawing her houses with open doors. Charlotte stood there for a moment in the particular silence of someone who's understanding something that requires revising a great deal of what they thought they knew. Then she said it plainly, with the directness of a person who has decided that honesty is the only thing left worth offering. She told him she had made an error. She told him she had evaluated the engineering by the casing and the man by his shoes. She said she had stopped being able to tell the difference between performing competence and actually having it, which is the kind of admission that costs something real to make. Caleb looked at her for a moment. Then he told her the truth about why he had built it, not to, prove a point. Not to acquire her factory or dominate her market or engineer a particular kind of poetic justice. He had built it to finish a promise made to himself about what kind of life he was going to build for Lily, and what kind of man he was going to be in the years after the hardest Tuesday of his life. Because alone, a gear is just metal. When they mesh together, that is when they create motion. He had been looking for the right mesh all along. Caleb did not stop at the market. He restored the human architecture of the factory, hired the people the industry had forgotten, brought back workers who had been optimized out of their livelihoods by the same logic that had once dismissed a small shop on the outskirts of the city as a dump. He proved with every decision he made that the inside is the real part, that the value of a system, like the value of a person, is not in its casing. That evening, the kitchen in their apartment was warm in the way that kitchens are warm when something has finally settled. Caleb sat at the table with Lily and made dinner and listened to her explain her drawings, all those houses with doors on every wall, all of them open, and then after she went to sleep, he sat for a moment in the quiet and picked up a bill that had been sitting on the table for too long. He wrote 4 words at the bottom in pencil, "Pay Friday." He set it down. For the first time in years, the ground under his feet felt solid, not because of the factory or the patent or the market share or any of the external things that the world uses to measure solidity, because he had been seen not for the shop he ran or the shoes he wore or the gap in his professional history, but for the brilliance in his hands and the integrity in his heart, for the promise he had kept, one triangle of crackers at a time, one night under bare bulbs at a time, one open door at a time. Never mistake the moment someone falls for the moment they have been defeated. Those are 2 entirely different things, and the distance between them is where some people do their most important work. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one the world has decided to stop watching. Sometimes the scrap heap is the masterpiece. Sometimes the puzzle box contains everything. Look at what a person builds when no one is watching. That is the real part. If this story moves something in you, please take a moment right now to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today, someone who has been dismissed, overlooked, or told that their work doesn't belong on the same stage. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story about the quiet brilliance living inside ordinary lives. And drop a comment below. Has there been a moment in your own life when someone finally looked past the casing and saw what was actually inside you? Tell us your story. Every single one matters, and we genuinely want to hear it.